Okay, I think we are going to try and be a little bit punctual tonight because I'm very conscious that people are joining us, many of you after a long day of work, and maybe some of you before starting a day or an evening of work. My name is Marianne O'Shea. I'm one of the lecturers in the Department of Applied Social Studies, and I'm going to hand over first to one of our colleagues. I suppose maybe something that you'll figure out by the end of this evening is that community workers and youth workers wear a lot of different hats. So Mick O'Brien is one of those people who wears many, many hats, and one of them, or the first one he'll introduce you to this evening, is his musical hat. So yeah, community and youth work are both non-formal spaces. So we're going to start things off with a bit of a tune. I'm going to hand it over to you, Mick. On you go.
Thanks, Marianne. This is a song from 1936 from the international brigades that went to Spain to fight against the fascist regime, and it details the Irish story, really. And 10 years before I saw the light of morning, a comradeship of heroes was laid. From every corner of the world came singing at the 15th International Brigade. Well, they came to stand beside the Spanish people to try and stem the rising fascist tide. Franco's allies were the powerful and wealthy. Frank Ryan's men came from the other side. Even the olives were bleeding as the battle for Madrid it thundered on. A truth and love against the force of evil, and brotherhood against the fascist clan. Viva la Quinta Brigada, no pastor and a pledge to bid them fights. Agalante is the cry around the hillside, and let us all remember them tonight. Many Irishmen heard the call of Franco, join Hitler and Mussolini too. Propaganda from the pulpit and newspapers helped Duffy had to enlist his crew. And the word came from Maynooth, support the Nazis. And the men of cloth they failed again, when the bishops blessed the blue shirts down in Galway, and he sailed beneath the swastika to Spain. Viva la Quinta Brigada, no pastor and a pledge to bid them fight. Agalante is the cry around the hillside, let us all remember them tonight. Let us all remember them tonight. Viva la Quinta Brigada, let us all remember them tonight. There you go.
That's a silent clap in there, Mick. Thanks a million.
So I hear it.
Better than no clapping, for sure. Thanks very much. A bit of a classic tune there. I want to say it was a different part of Maynooth that the cry came for the fascists, just to be clear. Thanks a million. And look I think that was a great way to start. And I hope for those of you that were nodding along or not nodding along, you get a sense of maybe the different ways and different approaches that we might have here in the Department of Applied Social Studies in Maynooth. So look I got the tricky job of hosting this evening or being an MC, and I am not as comfortable on a stage as Mick O'Brien is, so you'll have to bear with me. I suppose I'll try and keep things moving along. Thank you all for showing up, those of you who are interested in applying to the Masters in Community Work and Youth Work. And thank you also to those of you who have been invited to come back and talk about your time as students on the Masters in Community and Youth Work. So I'll try and maybe move things along a little bit a little bit quickly. We'll introduce each of the speakers in a little while, but for the moment, I'm going to hand you over to our colleague Deirdre Massey, who hopefully most of you have been in touch with already. Among the many hats that Deirdre wears is being involved in the recruitment processes for our master's students. So I'm going to hand you over, Deirdre. You're going to give a little bit of background, some of the kind of, just give you maybe the baseline information, which many of you might know, or some of you at least have a sense of, but just to give you a little bit of an overview of the kind of contours of the master's program. So Deirdre, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. And I will be brief, but it's useful for people here just to have a sense of the structure of the program and some of the key main points. And then really the highlight of our evening, I suppose, is to hear from our speakers and their journey to justice. So I'm going to screen share and hope that it all works out. Share. So maybe just somebody can confirm that you can see that. Yeah, perfect. All right. And maybe somebody else can keep an eye in the waiting room. I can just see 2 people are there. Thanks, Jamie. Yep. So look, we're here obviously tonight to talk about the Master in Social Science, Community and Youth Work. And the first point to note is that DAPS, the Department of Applied Social Studies, is the longest established provider of professional community work and youth work education and training in the country. In fact, this year we are celebrating our 40th anniversary. And there's 2 programs. There's a full-time master's program, NHB 54, when you're applying on PAC, and then the part-time in-service one is NHB 55. So just to talk about the main points of the full-time program, it's a 2-year program, and it's professionally endorsed. So as well as being an academic master's level 9 qualification, it's also a professionally endorsed program under community work by AIEB, which is the All Ireland endorsement body, and then for youth work under MSocSc, the North-South Education and Training Standards. And what that means is you come out, as well as having your academic master's, you come out as a professional community worker and a professional youth worker, which is really nice to have on your CV coming out, but it's also just recognising, I suppose, the professional formation and element of the master's program. So usually the master's full-time program is 3 college days per week from 10 to 5. And I say usually because that can be subject to change, but it's to give you an indication if you're committing to that around what it would look like for you. There's 2 full-time work placements in each academic year. The first year is 14 weeks full-time, and then the second year is 12 weeks. And we often get this question around, do I have to organise it myself? So it's a process, it's jointly decided between the student, the class coordinator, and myself in terms of learning objectives and what placements are available. It's organised via the department. Some other really interesting parts of doing this master's are being able to participate in comparative and international study visits. So usually for the master's students, that looks like a visit to rural Ireland, often Mayo, to Northern Ireland, which has been a visit to Derry in recent years, and then to the UN in Geneva. So it really adds to your own professional development and learning, and it can be a really fun thing to do as well. And there's a research project in the second year, which is why that work placement is slightly shorter. So most of those points apply for the part-time as well, in that it's professionally endorsed, there are work placements, there are study visits, but there are slightly different elements to it as well. First of all, it's part-time in service. So that means it's for those who are already working as community workers and youth workers but don't have their professional qualification. And it does need the support of your employer to participate in the program. That's something that we would explicitly do in terms of setting up a contract and having a conversation with yourself and your employer. It is a 3-year program. And again, it's usually 2 out of those 3 days that the full-time students are in. So you're studying alongside those full-time students while you're there as well. And then there is 1 external placement of 14 weeks. So that would mean leaving your current employer for 14 weeks and going externally to another organisation to study and to practice youth work or community work. And then 2 internal 7-week practice development projects, the PDP. So that's where you are within your organisation, but you're taking on to do a larger piece of work where you're taking the theory that you're learning in college and you're taking on a piece of work and really applying it over those 7-week periods as well. So very briefly, just to give a little bit of context of some of the structure and the main points of the full and the part-time programs. And I just have there at the bottom, most of you would have this email address anyway, but just in case, any queries after this session this evening, you can send them to CYW@mu.ie. And we also have a frequently asked questions document which we'll send on as well. So that is it. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Deirdre. I think that was a really brief, just to give people as we work through the evening that you'll have a sense of what we're talking about. So just a brief kind of explanation of the contours. I'm going to move things along now, and as I say, I'll introduce people as we go. There are lots of people here this evening that are involved in one way or another with the department, and I'm going to hand you over now to my colleague Jamie Gorman, who is a lecturer in community work in the Department of Social Studies, and Jamie is going to get people to be a little bit more interactive. I suppose normally, and if you were to come and do the program, you'd be very used to lots of talking. I would normally have done a run around the room and made everybody say something already, but I'm very consciously not doing that because we're going to try and create some spaces. If you hear, you'll end up hearing lots from lots of us who are working here, but what we want to try and do is give you a little bit more targeted information this evening, and then we're going to have a small group, a breakout session where you'll have an opportunity to spend a few minutes chatting more in a smaller group setting with some members of staff and maybe some of the past graduates. So that'll give you a little bit of a chance for people to introduce themselves in those smaller group settings. So for now, I'm going to hand you over to Jamie, and he's going to do an exercise with you.
Thanks, Marianne, and hello everybody. Great to see so many faces here, and thanks Mick for the rousing rendition of the song. And so what I'm going to ask you to do now is open the chat box where you'll see a link to a Mentimeter word cloud. And the theme of tonight's event, celebrating World Social Justice Day, which is coming up on the 20th, is the journey to justice. And so all of us are here from the Department of Social Studies because we're passionate about social justice, equality, human rights, and how we can make a difference in the world and use our professional programs in community work and youth work to contribute to social justice. So we're curious about you and what your passions are and your what gets your fire in your belly going. So please head over to the Menti and you'll be asked to share what social justice issues you're passionate about. And I'm going to share my screen now, so we should see those answers come up on the screen as people fill them in. So can someone shout and let me know if the Mentimeter is there? You can see it? Mick is saying yes, great. And while we're waiting for these to come in, I'll just do a little plug for Twitter. So we're on Twitter tonight and using the hashtag Journey to Justice. So if you tweet at all, please do check us out and feel free to retweet and share and amplify the conversation online tonight. So we see a whole range of issues there: challenging discrimination, working towards equality and inclusion, women's rights, choice, addressing violence, working towards the rights of sex workers, the rights of undocumented people, addressing land rights and water issues, access to water issues. I don't know exactly what water treaty means, but I presume that's what it has to do with. Housing and homelessness, of course, which is a huge issue in Ireland at the moment, and I'm sure for many people joining us from abroad as well. So we can see a whole range of really interesting passions and important issues that people are working towards addressing in your own ways. And so what we want to share with you tonight is a little bit about how the Masters in Community Work and Youth Work will help to give you equip you with the knowledge, with the skills, and help you to clarify your values in order to be able to really address these issues in a way that's strategic and a way that is effective in the world. And so I'm going to pass you back over to Marianne, who is going to introduce some really interesting change makers who are doing just that.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks for the Mentimeter, and thanks to those of you who put in some words. I think it gives you a good sense of range of issues that people care about, and I think care is the right word, because it's the stuff that really sparks your interest. It's the stuff that people are passionate about, and we have three very passionate people here this evening to talk to you. So Jamie is right to call them change makers. So we have three past graduates of our master's program in community work and youth work. And I'm going to have to have a quick look at the program to see what order they're going to speak in, because I'm going to do it in order just in case. So we have three speakers. We have Megan Berry. Megan is a relatively recent graduate of the Masters in Community and Youth Work and in Maynooth, and she is also currently an employee of Maynooth University, not with ourselves within the Department of Applied Social Studies, but within the broader Access Office. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about that yourself, Megan. And I'll do a little bit of I'll introduce all three of you first, I think, and then Megan, if you hand over to the next speaker, and then if the next speaker hands over to the next speaker, we can keep things, and I'll keep an eye on time. So alongside Megan, we have Mairead McDevitt. Mairead is a slightly less recent graduate of the master's program. And Mairead is, again, a very passionate community worker and has been a youth worker actually in the past as well, and is working currently with the Migrant Rights Centre in Ireland as their team lead in community development. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about your current work, Mairead, and your experience of the Masters. And then finally, we have John Kelly, who is an even less recent graduate of the postgraduate qualifications in community and youth work. And I think you can tell that by the length of John's beard. It's an indicator of how long ago he graduated. And John has been a community worker for a good many years now and has been working primarily in the area of mental health. So it's kind of interesting. Some of those issues connect in with some of the issues that people have flagged as their passions. So look, I'll hand you over to Megan and let you talk, Megan. Just if you could tell us a little bit about your journey into, through and out of the Masters in Community and Youth Work. We'd love to hear it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Marianne. It was great to see everybody's values, as we call them, or what they're passionate about there a moment ago, because it goes to show as well, you know, this course, and if that's what they're interested in, that's what they're passionate about, this is where they're meant to be. So my name is Megan Berry, and I work as the Traveller Outreach Officer on the Maynooth Access Programme here. And I suppose my role is to provide targeted information and supports to Traveller students to access better opportunities to higher education, because Travellers are significantly underrepresented in the third level education system. So, you know, and that's, again, structural systemic inequalities. I also work on the Violence Against Women programme in Paddy Point, challenging gender issues and working to promote best practice for Traveller women access and services and supports as well. So I suppose the master's course for me, my journey to it was I studied an undergrad in social care, and I am a member of the travelling community. So I, you know, growing up in Ireland, there are so many different issues and challenges and, you know, in terms of discrimination, racism and inequalities. But to me, we kind of shrugged them off our shoulders because we're born that way and we're born into that. But I suppose I studied social care, and people were coming with so many different issues, and, you know, it was very one-to-one intervention, and you could see the issues, but you were so limited in what you could do in terms of, you know, challenging them, because they were always individualized, and they were always caused by structural or systemic causes. So I suppose for social care, it wasn't where I needed to be. So I heard of the master's programme. It was actually, I think it was Eileen Flynn or Sally, they had done it themselves. And I was inspired by the course, by their, like, everything. So I decided to apply myself. And I suppose after that, then we came into the course, you know, it's, as Deirdre was saying, it was a 2-year-long course. There was lots involved in that. I think the journey through the program was, there was various different modules where we could learn, you know, about ourselves, but also our, you know, professionalism as well. So the modules that we had was equality, social justice and human rights, youth work, sociology. There was a piece of psychology in there as well. We love psychology and how to see how society operates and why they operate in a particular sense as well. You know, I think I studied in a very small class, and it was a very diverse class. So that peer-to-peer learning was so important, and it was so invaluable as well. And we learned through critical dialogue rather than, you know, just sitting there and getting all of this information in. It was just inquiring into every single thing, into what we were learning, into society, into the people around us. It was asking so many questions and learning in depth about you know, the issues in relation to social injustices and human rights and things like that. So I suppose for me, through the course, studying community and youth work, it really challenged the way I taught. It challenged my own perceptions around different, you know, in that thing a minute ago, you were able to see so many different, like, you know, racial injustices, women's rights and things like that. So it really challenged my own ways of thinking about other issues outside of travellers and outside of my own kind of box as a woman. So, you know, that it really supported me in, I suppose, looking at what my own values were, as well as my professional values, and making sure they were congruent to the actions that I was going to deliver on when I go out in the future to work. So I suppose coming into how the programme equipped and prepared me for social justice, you know, we had 2 placements, which was so valuable. There were 12-week placements and 12 to 14 weeks. And I suppose one of them was the youth work. So everything we had learned, all of the theory that we had learned from each of the modules, we were able to demonstrate that and put it into, first we were able to envision it, you know, happening around us. And then we were able to take it away and come back in with different initiatives and make sure that we were putting what we had learned into practice. I think the placements as well really, you know, being able to immerse yourself into an area of youth work, looking at the youth injustices, empowerment, participation, and being able to, you know, follow through the principles and values of youth work, and then being able to do the same for community work. It really helps you to position yourself and where you want to go with your career. And there's so many different areas, you know, like policy, working with NGOs, working at national level, local level with the communities, supporting them, empowering them, you know, building on resilience and things like that. So I suppose that was really helpful to me in my role with working in the area of education and here in Maynooth, working with, you know, students who are disadvantaged, you know, and not being able to reach their potential because of these systems and barriers that are in place. So, you know, being a traveller and also understanding the challenges was detrimental. And for me, I think as well, going into the course and looking at issues of you know, internalized oppression. For somebody who would have faced discrimination for a long time, I would have accepted it, but then I was able to understand why I was thinking the way that I was about my community or about other communities as well. So, you know, it really shaped me in terms of my professional capacity and my personal capacity as well. So it was a fantastic experience, and I'm really glad, you know, I found my niche when I came to community and youth work. It was something that I was looking for when I was in social care, but I didn't know if it was the right route or if I was to go on and do a research master's, which that's another thing, another module in the course as well, was doing research is so beneficial, you know, when you're working in areas of policy particularly, or if you're especially areas of change, if you want to even just to get funding, like, you know, it's so important. So it was a fantastic experience for me, and yeah, I strongly recommend it.
Thanks so much, Megan. I think your input there tells us why it is more useful to have graduates coming to talk about the programme than it is to have the people who are working on the programme. So thank you so much. It's amazing, even in a couple of years, to hear what you how you experienced the course yourself and what you've learned from it and what you brought into your professional life. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, I look forward to working with you loads over the coming years.
Brilliant, and I'm delighted to be working with you all as well.
Great, thanks Megan. I'm going to ask Mairead to join us now. Are you able to come in? And for the you're still on mute. But for the participants or the applicants, I'm not sure what collective title to give you. For the listeners, I suppose we're all listeners, but if there are any questions that you have throw your hand up. You know, if this is an opportunity for you to put your hand up and ask a question of any of the contributors. If you don't feel like using your voice, type something into the chat box. And if you want to hold off and wait until you're in some of those smaller group settings, feel free to do that as well, because we'll do a little bit of feedback after that smaller group setting. So it might be the case that some of the questions come up, you know, they might be across the groups, or we'll share some of those pertinent questions and hopefully useful answers. So Mairead, you're still on mute there.
Can you hear all that background noise? Is it okay?
No, it's fine for us.
Okay, perfect, great. Great. Listen, thank you so much. Thanks so much for the invitation to join tonight. And yeah, I actually resonate so much with Megan. I feel like you said everything I had written down here, Megan. So I'll try and keep it brief. So my name is Mairead McDevitt. I am a community and youth worker, and I work at the Migrant Rights Centre. I started 4 years ago, actually, as a part-time youth worker. It was the first paid youth worker role in MRCI at the time. And I was working with a group of undocumented young people on a kind of a project and campaign called Young Papers and Powerful. And then we got some funding, and that made me go full-time, and that was just brilliant, because, you know, being able to do youth work on a full-time basis it's just fantastic, and you can get so much more done in 5 days than you can get done in 3. So so I was in that role for 3 years, and then I suppose the you know, the young people that were in the project, you know, as with the, you know, a lot of them got their papers and aged out, and that's what you want, you know what I mean? They're moving on with their lives. So I moved into a role of community work a year ago, and I suppose I'm primarily working on I suppose leadership and supporting I suppose we've different kind of like variations, I suppose you could call it, of community work and organising in MRCI at the moment. We're doing a lot of stuff in the meat sector. We're working with home care, with carers in the private home. We've recently, I'm not sure if any of you heard about the Justice for Undocumented campaign, which saw its biggest win to date. We still can't believe, so pinching ourselves that after an 11-year campaign, which is led by undocumented people themselves, they secured a broad regularisation scheme. So a regularisation scheme is basically a pathway to papers, and it's utterly life-changing. And to be in the mix of all of that when it's happening is just phenomenal, you know. So and YPP, who I worked with, were part of all that. They certainly, you know, kind of raised the bar in terms of, like, you know, like what it was like for a young person who's undocumented growing up in Ireland, and, you know, because that kind of, it's a very, I suppose, particular cohort in society that you don't really hear about a lot. So anyway, in terms of my journey to and through the programme, it's kind of an interesting one. I worked in the private sector for 20 years, and in hospitality and retail, and it kind of, I suppose, it really got to a point where I was not happy at all, and, you know, I knew that, like, I had all of these ideas and things and thoughts about, like, injustice and inequality, and, you know, like, just everything that was kind of wrong in the world and society. Well, I didn't know what to do with it, or where to go, or where to put them. So I've been working in management in the private sector, and I went and actually started an MA in Maynooth, in Cork, in management in the community and voluntary sector. And very quickly I was like, what are you doing? This is the wrong course for you. Like, you haven't got a clue. So one of the lecturers actually put me in touch with a past pupil of Maynooth, Evie Finlay, and I am internally indebted to her, because honestly, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be on this course. She just said to me, just tell me about yourself. What are you at? What are your values? What are you passionate about? What are you motivated about? And I told her, and she said, have you ever thought about community and youth work? And I said, what are you talking about? I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. But when I looked at, I suppose, the content and looked into it more, I was like, it just made a lot of sense, and it just kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me. And I was like, and also as well, you know, I was also at a time in my life where I was really just ready to have, I suppose, those ideas and values and perspectives challenged, and, you know, kind of put through a bit of a lens of, like, I hear, you know, you have these things, but, like, you need to kind of, like, do something with it, you know, because yeah. So, and also as well, like, it was really just on the professional qualification, that was also very important to me as well, because I wanted to come out of something and be ready be ready to work straight away and work in the sector. Like it was the hardest and most rewarding journey I've ever been on. Like it's the best thing I've ever done, and I never look back. And you know, to have put all of those values and perspectives and privilege through kind of like the lens of critically analyzing systems of oppression and intersectional inequality and all these things, it was just the best thing. And it really, I suppose, set me up well for finding employment then after graduation, you know. But I suppose, Megan, what you were saying there about going on placement, I mean, placement just changed everything for me. Like, I never thought that I'd actually see myself as a youth worker, but then I went and did a youth work placement in Swan Youth Service in northeastern Dublin City, and it was the best time of my life. Like, honestly, I had great fun. But like, you know, when your work doesn't feel like work when you're having fun, and it was just absolutely fantastic. And then I started and then I did my second placement in Co-op, and that was fantastic as well, totally different, but absolutely brilliant as well, and lots of opportunities there. So then afterwards, after I graduated in 2017, I think it took a bit of a year, or no, like 6 months, and then a job came up in MRCI. I said, maybe I might go see if maybe I might be able to do this. And I went for it and got it, and lo and behold, here I am. And I suppose what the course kind of gave me really was, I suppose, and this is the thing, is that like community and youth work is fundamentally, like, it is interested in, sorry, I'm reading from notes there, but because I have to kind of write it down, but it is fundamentally interested in addressing the root causes of inequalities, but and the journey to social justice. And it provides you with the tools to create conditions for people to see themselves and be agents of change, not victims of circumstance, you know. And I suppose in MRCI, that's really how we work, you know what I mean? We see people as powerful agents of change, and, you know, not just somebody who's come through the drop-in centre for like support on something, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, you know, you can get involved in this campaign, or there's a network or something like that, you know what I mean? So so yeah, I couldn't recommend this course more. If you're ready to have your ideas and values and things kind of challenged, you know, and open and ready for that, I think it's really important that we, you know, that we do that as social justice peoples. I don't know what we call ourselves, community youth workers, but you know what I mean. I could talk at length of this, but I'll try to keep brief.
No, look, Mairead, thank you so much again, and I hope for those of you that are listening and kind of discovering something about the programme, you're hearing what Mairead's saying. There was a few things, and even when you were speaking yourself, you talked about that idea of theory and practice, you know. So you're going into spaces, you're learning ideas, you're learning to look at the world in a new way, and then you're learning, you know, where to go and what to do. So it's not just thinking and feeling and having that sense, it's figuring out what you're going to do. And one of the other things that, Mairead, I think that you talked about, and Megan, then your own experience as a young traveller woman, that it's not working on people, you know, it's not other people, you know, being the subject of your work. It's working with people, it's creating spaces for people to move things forward, you know, and to change the world. And I suppose both of you mentioned such an important word, and I could see people nodding their heads when you talked about it, and it's that ideas of values, you know, and it's really about questioning, you know, exploring your own values. And you know, I think as a community and youth worker, you have to connect with your values, and your values have to be shaped. You know, it's not for no reason that we're having this event around Social Justice Day. You have to care about social justice. You have to care about shifting things in a direction that creates a better world for everyone. And then the one other thing you mentioned, Mairead, and Megan, I think you alluded to it as well, is the challenge. You know, it is challenging, you know, and for all of us, and it's one of the privileges that we have as staff here, is that, you know, we get challenged as well. All those questions Megan was talking about, they're going in every direction, you know, and as they should. So it's about questioning the things that we think we know, and figuring out how we know them and why we know them and how we might learn them differently, you know, and opening up new spaces for that. So, go ahead, Mairead.
I just have one more thing, actually, just to say, the fundamental principles of community youth work. We talk about empowerment and participation. The program itself actually is really empowering, and I think we also have to be really empowered to be able to empower others, and it's highly participative, you know what I mean? So like, I really felt equipped and empowered to be able to do the work then afterwards. Do you know what I mean? And I think you do that by being challenged, Marianne. And I think, you know what I mean? And yeah, so just wanted to say that.
No,
yeah.
that's great. Thanks, Mairead. I'm conscious that I'm not doing a very good job in timekeeping and nobody else is giving me a dig, but I'm going to ask John to come in and no rush, you know, that's
okay.
it.
No, I'll just keep it to the 2 minutes.
Go way out of that. Don't you? You've got a long beard, you've got a long journey.
I think a lot's been said that, so it's really great to be here as well and be part of the panel and to see everybody here. And so thanks a million. Basically, to start off, the work I'm currently doing is I'm the coordinator with the Gateway Mental Health Project. It's based in Rathmines, Dublin. It's a community-based and member-led project for people with self-experience of mental health distress or illness, and basically taking collective approaches to enable people to improve their health, maximize their opportunities, but also a key kind of principle for us is to inform change, including national policy. So that's the Gateway project, predominantly over. So I think I was part of the first cohort of the master's, the first master's course that took place. So I graduated 11 years ago. And since that time, I've been very fortunate with the jobs that I've had. I've worked predominantly in mental health because that's really what drives me in trying to affect and be part of the change that needs to happen in mental health services, the system in society. But also worked with in the area of disability and, you know, working with people that be disabled, as in disabled by society and the state, to make their community, their area more inclusive and accessible. And I've also had a short time, I was very privileged to work with Pabby Point and the men's health team as well. So I've had incredible experiences working in my work life since graduating 11 years ago. But yeah, predominantly it's in the area of mental health that I'm interested in. As well as the work, I'd be involved with different networks as well. Nationally, I'm part of the Community Development Mental Health Network, which would have, it's fairly new, but that will have a strong lobbying function that we're trying to develop. And I'm also part of MAD in Ireland, which is a website that should be launching soon to raise a critical awareness about mental health issues. So journey to and through the programme, well, I mentioned mental health. So my lived experience is basically from a fairly young age. I had experience of mental health distress and serious mental health illness and diagnosis, and part of that experience, I suppose, became it was quite marginalizing, you know, whatever about the well-being aspect of it, actually how a community responded to it, how people that were close to me responded to it, how the state and attitudes were around that, actually I felt had a big impact on my well-being. So kind of by the age of when I was got into my 30s, I was kind of doing different jobs and just kind of very conscious that actually society had a big part to play with mental health, and that, you know, I found the actual clinical approaches to mental health actually quite marginalizing, disempowering, and you know, serve to kind of enhance the isolation that I was experiencing. So I decided actually in 2009 to get involved with social work. I thought I wanted to help people, and actually on that course in Maynooth in 2009, Ona McCardle, a community development lecturer with Maynooth, came and did a lecture to the social work students and was asking about community. What is community? That triggered something in me because I didn't feel like part of a community. And then just actually the more we were being introduced to community development and the idea that people could be supported to work collectively to A, meet their own needs, but B, and really importantly, to effect change. It just totally spoke to me. So actually I just left the course that I was on but waited a few months until the master's actually started, and that's how I got on board the course. And then through the course, both Megan and Mairead mentioned the challenges and kind of like really in terms of your value set. So like I think the course works really, really well to do that, and it's really important that it does in terms of, I think, group work. And it really stood out for me as a module I really enjoyed, but it was also really, really challenging because if we're going to be supporting groups of people to work together collectively for whatever the reasons, including to inform change, we have to be prepared for the kind of tensions, the conflicts that are going to come up. So like in the course, I was thrown right into it. We were, and most students that I've heard from since talk quite anonymously, about the experience of being the learning you get in the course, working with students. It's very different from being in a top-down class where everybody's behind a desk. You're really learning from and with the students as well as the process on the course. So that's one standout thing for me. The placements were hugely important as well. I ended up with Peter Hussey in Crooked House, a youth theatre project. So like, it's just really, really interesting in terms of, I suppose one thing I try and get across is like, I was coming in to do community work, but I think being open to, like, if you're coming in to do youth work or community work, being open to the other possibilities, because you just don't know what will open up for you. But youth, like just seeing how youth work could inform the non-formal approaches to inform the likes of sexual health for young people, emotional health, to be able to explore bullying through drama was just really like amazing, and I've carried that through to my work and have used that since, because I learned to become a drama facilitator through that. And then I ended up in a mental health a student placement with the project now that I'm coordinating. I just started back there about 3 months ago, so it's come full circle for me. So that was huge part of my learning was on the placement. So I think really what you're getting from in Maynooth is learning with the students and from the students. It's quite challenging, like it's very different course from other courses that I've been on, and I've been on a few, but in terms of, if you think about third level normally, and I'd include myself in this, I didn't come from what I call a disadvantaged background, and most students would be coming from not a disadvantaged background, quite middle class. Whereas in this course, you're getting people coming from all kinds of marginalised backgrounds, so you really have time over the 2 years or 3 years to check your own isms, because we've all been brought up with different, we've been cultured with different biases, and that's a challenge that you have to check. And then I think really importantly as well, the lecturers, they're not just reading off a book. It's not just academically that they're talking to you. They walk the walk. They probably still do in terms of being practitioners as well as lecturers. So that's really important. So I think, I don't know if I'd say anything else now at this stage. I'm conscious of time as well. So I just can't recommend the course enough. I'd echo what Mairead said. The course is the best thing I've done in terms of growth and development as a person as well as a professional, and it was also the hardest, most challenging. But if you like a challenge, you're in the right place.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks a million. And just picking up there, the two bits, the bit of peer learning, and Mairead flagged that as well. So you're learning, whatever about the lecturers, whatever about you think about us, the people in the room are learning from each other, and they bring such different stories and histories and backgrounds. And I'm conscious, just as Julie left us, and hopefully she'll be able to pick up, there are a few people on the call tonight that are calling in from different countries. And I know the graduates that we have here in front of us this evening are all Irish and working in the Irish context. But actually, over the years, we've had a long tradition of having international students, of Irish students having international placements, and of engaging with global issues. So I suppose it's very much that idea from the local to the global. And I think all of the different contributors earlier mentioned that idea of the state. So the role of the state. So it's the idea of civil society, of communities, of voices, and how we exist within the world and within the confines of the state that we're in, and how those states engage with other states. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to try and keep it moving along. I'm not as quick as I should be. I have too many things to say. I think Deirdre is managing the technical end. We're just going to take, 5 minutes maybe. Deirdre's going to pop us into some smaller groups, and it's going to give some of the participants or the listeners or the potential applicants a chance to maybe ask some of those questions that they haven't asked already. And as I'm speaking, I'm seeing a couple of messages hopping up and chat, and hopefully we'll have answers for those questions for you when we come back. So Deirdre, I'm not sure if it's just about clicking a button now.
Yeah, no, I have the rooms set up. Well, I hope I do. Just kind of a nice mix between our speakers, some of the staff, just to make the points. Actually, there's some staff members that we haven't met yet, Saoirse, and even maybe in the breakout rooms as well. But we're all past students of the department as well, which is just another interesting avenue as to where you can end up. So I'm going to, open these rooms now, and then give for 5 or 6 minutes, and then come back for any questions or feedback as part of the wider group. And it's really, as Marianne says, space to ask questions and just thoughts on what you've heard as well. Because sometimes, you know, we feel like we're doing the talking at this kind of event, but actually it's far more important for us to hear from you guys as well. So here we go. Wish me luck.
All right, so if we